Good morning, and you're very welcome to this FTI Treasury Talks, where I'm joined by Justin Callahan, the CEO of FTI Treasury. My name is Marie Clark, and this morning we're going to be talking about burden to benefit, the case for outsourcing Treasury operations. So thank you, Justin, for joining me.
It's a bit of a mouthful of a topic.
It sure is. So I think maybe we might start with, if you wouldn't mind, just giving us an idea of what exactly Treasury outsourcing is.
Yeah, okay. Again, a behemoth of a question to start with. It's funny. You can kind of look back at the history of Treasury outsourcing. When I first got involved in this game, I was actually as a client, and it was back in the 90s. And back then, there was this concept that Treasury outsourcing would be the outsourcing of, you wouldn't have a treasury, you wouldn't have a treasurer. Everything would be outsourced to a third party. That notion didn't last very long, as you can imagine, because outsourcing lends itself to certain types of activities, and it doesn't lend itself to other activities. So very quickly, that sort of evolved into a situation where Treasury outsourcing became the outsourcing of very specific Treasury processes and operations, with most organizations choosing to keep the strategic elements of Treasury in-house and looking to then outsource either all or a good portion of their treasury operations. This particularly, I suppose, became relevant with the development of the in-house bank concept, because the processes that are associated with in-house banking in general, and when I talk about in-house banking, I'm talking about the treasury elements of in-house banking as opposed to COBO and POBO and the likes. Those elements are very well-defined processes, but they require expertise, they require systems infrastructure, and they require significant resource. And it doesn't always make sense to do that internally. And therefore, because they are well-defined and they have all of those draws, those burdens, I suppose, when we bring it back to the topic, it means that they're well-placed for Treasury outsourcing. So, generally speaking, Treasury outsourcing now is the outsourcing of very specific Treasury operations to a third party, but with that third party operating as part of your Treasury team. Okay. Give you an example of a couple of the key sorts of things that we see outsourcing. Generally, our clients fall into two buckets. We have clients that we are providing in-house banking style services to. So what are they? They're daily cash and liquidity management, managing cash pools, managing notional currency pools, managing intercompany loan portfolios. And then there are FX elements that lie on top of that, be that either balance sheet hedging or cash flow hedging. And then there are things like intercompany netting, cash forecasting, all of those processes that you would expect in order to manage your daily cash within an in-house banking operation. The other bucket of clients that we generally see are those who wish to outsource a lot of the administrative elements of Treasury. So things like all of the back office operations, things like daily bank reconciliations, settlements, dealing with any queries from banks, and then importantly, Treasury accounting. We have a team of expert Treasury accountants here. Treasury accounting is unique, as you well know. It can be very hard to find expert resources. And our team has that expertise and is able to bring that to the benefit of our clients. So effectively, those are, I suppose, the two main sorts of things that we see outsourced.
And you've kind of answered my next question, which would have been like, why would companies choose to go down that route of outsourcing a portion, a function, a part of that operation? Like you did mention there, staffing, expertise, knowledge, and all that. Maybe you might talk a little bit more about.
Sure. So the business case for outsourcing is generally quite strong, both from a financial and a practical perspective. There are a number of benefits that we would normally discuss with our clients. The first one is you have access to expertise. So it's expertise by experience, right? The clue is in the name. We have a team of people here, across front office trading, back office management of settlements and bank accounts, and our accounting team that have a huge amount of experience in terms of how specific activities are undertaken. That's very difficult to acquire in-house, and importantly, very expensive to acquire in-house. On a similar theme, continuity of resourcing is very important to clients. You may be able to develop a team where you have maybe an international cash manager and someone from back office, but if you lose one of them, it's a big hole in your process. Whereas we have a cross-trained team of professionals, so there's never any discontinuation of that, and that has been a major help for lots of our clients. The other one, which is our clients quote as being a major benefit, is our ability to implement and get a process over the line. So if you think of something like intercompany netting, very easy to probably evaluate the benefits and see where the benefits will come from. The burden is to actually source a software provider, implement that software, manage all the static data, do all the training. This is something that we do 4 or 5 times a year when we're implementing new clients. We're good at it. So rather than it being a process that is at risk of failure if done internally and will take 9 months, we can do it in 4 to 5 weeks and have people up and running. That's a big benefit because clients can take trust that if it's netting or if it's a new liquidity management structure, we have all of the infrastructure in place, all of the systems in place, so we can roll things out. They are out-of-the-box solutions, but they're all customized for our clients. And then, of course, the final one, cost. We can undertake these processes at a fraction of the cost that it will cost a client to do them in-house, quite simply because we have economies of scale and we have expertise. And importantly, we've invested very heavily in our technology infrastructure. So robotic process automation and artificial intelligence enabled processes mean that we can do things in a very, very low risk environment at a much lower cost than possible to do it in-house. And that, of course, with the benefit, as we refer to, of being robust and scalable solution, means it's a pressing case for outsourcing some of those burdensome sort of tasks that are normally associated with Treasury.
That flexibility is good, having that flexibility and that access to additional staff when maybe a Treasury team are looking for a new project, as you say. Then just say, so you've made the business case, and internally then to convince, you need buy-in, you need to discuss this with lots of individuals. Yeah. So how is that process, or when is the best time, we'll say, to
that's a fair comment. And we onboard clients at all different stages. Often there may be a catalyst. So for instance, a big acquisition where suddenly you've become a much more international organization and you have a requirement for much more sophisticated cash pooling techniques. We can help both implement and manage manage those. Those are easy buy-ins because there's a new body of work. You're looking for a resource and expertise and systems to be able to manage it. So really from a buy-in perspective there, you're looking up the line. So you're looking at the treasurer and the CFO. And really our ability to show a very robust and trustworthy process and systems coupled with really excellent client references means that is often a reasonably easy sell. What can be more difficult is if you're trying to implement something like, for instance, a new forecasting system. Cash forecasting, we know, is a problem in a lot of organizations. And our process involves implementing specific forecasting software and integrating that with all of the information available. Now, sometimes that can scare people simply because they believe it's going to end up being a big body of work. But again, we can prove that we've done this multiple times, and we know our way around most of the big systems: Oracle, SAP, Sun, all of the larger sort of ERP packages, and that means that we can present a very implementable offering that at the end of the day will prove that we're going to reduce resource requirements, or make processes more efficient, and enable our clients' core staff to be able to use the information that we're providing for more strategic decision making. So like generally speaking, it gets back to that concept of having teams buy-in, and often we're looking for pan-organization buy-in. So it's everything from the local financial controller right the way up to the CFO. So we work very much like in partnership as part of our client's treasury management team, and I think that sort of partnership approach really brings a benefit. I mean, if you look at some of the testimonials from our clients, they'll really state that we are an embedded part of their team. They treat us like part of their team. We speak to them every day. We have very well documented and robust processes, but we also chip in on project basis. We bring our knowledge from what we see elsewhere when there are specific issues that might arise with a client. So working in partnership, promoting the efficiencies, showing the benefits to all levels of the organization is really how we kind of get there in terms of getting that buy-in and from the stakeholders.
It's interesting. That integration, like when you think about integration, you can sometimes think about integrating systems, but as you say, integrating the team, and we sit as like a quasi department within our clients' teams, and that's really, really good. So then I guess the next stage is the how. So how do you move on then? So you've convinced the clients. How do you take it to the next stage? What are the processes?
Yeah.
Is it a burdensome process? I mean, you're trying to move away from the burden, so you don't want to create a new burden.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Like I suppose again, we can be with clients. We're generally either implementing something new or taking something on, and that has been either difficult to manage, difficult to resource, or whatever, right? So really, as you say, we have sort of proved ourselves that we can either do this better or can implement it in a new way, in a very easy fashion. Our approach to all of this is to take control of the implementation and take responsibility for the implementation. So generally speaking, what we'll do is we'll come up with an implementation plan, obviously, identify the key processes and touch points within an organization, and then we will take command of that situation in order to, at the end of the day, develop and deliver a service offering and an output for a client. So if I think of, for instance, if we're charged with managing an international liquidity management structure, we will take charge of integrating all of the bank data, for instance, if there's ZBAs or notional pools, into our treasury management systems. We will implement a straight-through processing link between our treasury management system and our FX trading platform. We're dealing only with client banks, so there's no exposure to FTI. We're dealing with the client's panel of banks, so they view us as part of the client. So we've taken control now of both the information flow from a cash management perspective and the FX trading requirements. All of that is embodied in our treasury management system. But importantly, we will link that up to our client's ERP system to ensure that they have whatever information they have required. And that might be us extracting ERP data in order to develop cash forecasting, or it could be us providing an integrated accounting file directly back in to their ERP system to produce the required output. From a client perspective, our implementations are a very light touch. It's generally a requirement to provide us with data and introductions. And then because we've seen most of these processes before and we see repetitive systems effectively, we're able to integrate that and manage that in a very straightforward purpose. Where we're providing services that are deeper within the organization, and one that springs to mind is intercompany netting, again, because that has touch points in many different subsidiaries. We also will provide all of the necessary training. So generally we provide WebEx training across different world time zones. And then we also help with things like developing file interfaces and the like. So really, we try to provide the full package, make implementation very straightforward, and at the end of the day, just deliver a service to a client. And I think, again, if you look at our testimonials, one of the things that is pointed out is how easy and how quickly we can do things that may seem almost impossible, a burden, if you're looking at it just from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it's simply because we do them all the time.
Yeah, that we have the expertise, the experience of doing them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like I think you've shown that the business case is completely there, and to take away that burden and show the benefits, release that expertise within the Treasury Department themselves to focus on those strategic issues and take away those tasks. So is there anything else to add?
Yeah, well,
that you'd like to conclude on? Will
yeah. I think it's important to look at some of the things that can be outsourced.
Mm-hmm.
Cash management, FX risk management, forecasting, netting, accounting. These are things that are very, very process driven, can be resource heavy, and require a very well integrated systems. They're all burdens, right? To get them all in place, and they're expensive. To hammer together that yourself is an expensive thing. But no one's going to say that having a well developed cash management, FX, forecasting, netting, that there aren't benefits at the end of that. The trick is getting the balance right between the cost and implementation and risk effort and getting those benefits. And outsourcing is an excellent way to release those benefits and to effectively push the burden onto someone else. So that's what I would say is that if you identify something within your treasury environment that you believe is beneficial, but think that it might be difficult to get there, talk to us, talk to an outsourcing service provider. And you might find that it's easier than you think.
Okay, so it's thinking outside the box, considering all the options, looking sometimes externally when the resources are not there internally. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. For further information, please visit our website. It's ftitreasury.com.